Come with me if you want to live.
Male auteurs creating strong female characters in cinema is nothing new.
Wait a minute. If we let it in, the ship could be infected. You know the quarantine procedure.
24 hours for decontamination.
In 1954, Francois Truffaut commented that film is an ideal place for a director to express their personal ideas. Critic Andrew Sarris named this concept the auteur theory and added that film should be a means of artistic expression, and the greatest films are those that are marked by their director's signature. As a director matures and creates more movies, identifying this signature becomes possible. Peter Wolin added in Signs and Meaning in the Cinema, "The pattern formed by these motifs is what gives an auteur's work its particular structure, both defining it internally and distinguishing one body of work from another." Gerald Mast chimed in saying, "True marks of an auteur will appear in all of their films, despite any differences in writers, cinematographers, or stars." In the Alien films, Ellen Ripley is a strong independent female who consistently defeats 7-foot killing machines with little to no help from men. The male directors who created the first 3 films for the franchise, Ridley Scott, James Cameron, and David Fincher, display women as this image outside of the Alien series as well. Scott showed a fictional tale of the first woman in the U.S. Navy Special Warfare Group in G.I. Jane, had 2 female rebels be Robin Hoods in Thelma and Louise, and had a cyborg come to terms with her identity in Blade Runner. When it comes to the first Alien flick, Ridley was the one who changed Ripley's gender from male to female. Entertainment Weekly called Ripley one of the first female movie characters who isn't defined by the men around her or by her relationship to them.
Get started on core panel. I'll be right down.
What the hell is she coming down here for?
You better stay the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, I'd like to see what she's gonna do when she got there.
David Fincher had a successful female writer leave her abusive husband in Gone Girl, had a girl hacker get revenge against rapists in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo,
May I kill him?
and had a beautiful blonde manipulate a rich man into getting him to realize the meaning of life in The Game. Jim Cameron has been creating strong female characters in his films for years, having them overcome insurmountable odds, and even help showcase them when he's not behind the lens like in Alita Battle Angel, and he takes a step backward into the writer or producer's role. Mr. Cameron stated on the record that Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is a, quote, objectified icon, and said her suit was overly sexualized with a, quote, bustier costume that was very form-fitting. To see if his comments ring true or untrue, an analysis of Patty Jenkins' 2017 superhero film is warranted. Warner Brothers' 4th entry into their DC Extended Universe film series is an objectively feminist piece. A little girl grows up to be an adult warrior in an all-female island of autodidactic fighters. She's a true leader and achieves victory in the world of men, unlike the rest of the Amazonians. Her care and maternal instincts shine as she wants to help women and children who have been affected by the war and wants to help. But the oppression of women in the current early 1900s society doesn't support her progressive ideals.
Trevor, what the hell were you thinking, bringing a woman into the council chamber?
That I brought back his time.
She calls being a secretary slavery and rips a general for being an awful human being.
Why will they not let him speak? He's talking peace.
Diana's determination and power saves Steve almost single-handedly in a back alley fight, rescues Charlie without any help, and leads Allied forces out of the trenches to defeat the central powers of World War I in the midpoint of the film. She led, they followed, they being men. But she couldn't have done it without the help of the other sex. Sir Patrick helps Steve's crew continue their journey forward in the pub. In No Man's Land, she doesn't defeat the Germans by herself, her squad comes onto the battlefield and fights alongside her. But, instead of taking all the credit, she puts the attention back onto the group.
You did this.
We did.
She sees the importance of Trevor and men in her life and values it, even when she gets upset at them by wrongfully deducing Ares' identity at the ball. In the climax, Steve comes to Diana after a brutal collision in her fight with Ares, and he helps her come out of the shockwave. What he does, action-wise, will change Diana. He makes a sacrifice to save lives as Diana witnesses it, and in turn turns Diana into the person she's destined to become, a god. If he doesn't die, it doesn't wake her up. She doesn't discover her true potential. In the lore of 2017 Wonder Woman, the story is a retelling of the Bible, with Diana as the parallel Christ figure. Diana is told that she was created from clay and was given life by Zeus without the need for procreation. The story of Ares, the god of war, is that he was envious of Zeus's creation of humans, so he sought to corrupt them with evil. Zeus and Ares then went to war, and Zeus left Ares with such a great blow that Ares retreated and vowed revenge to destroy the human race. To defeat Ares, Zeus left a weapon with the Amazonians, a god-killer sword. However, in parallel to the Bible, the weapon wasn't a sword, it was a human. She later learns her true heritage, that she is the daughter of God. Diana is the Christ figure. Her headband looks like a crucifix. Her mother Hippolyta's headband doesn't feature this design at all. Diana does not kill Dr. Poison, not because she's a woman, but because she believes in human beings, no matter if they have past crimes or not, and forgives them like Christ would. Ares, in his role of Lucifer, tells how evil man is to Diana and wanted Zeus to see how horrible his creation was. Ares tempts Diana as she has him in her lasso of truth, just as Jesus was tempted in the desert by the evil one. Diana, just like Christ, resists, overcomes, and defeats Ares in a Christ-like pose in the sky not once, but twice. And other symbols in terms of psychoanalytics, Professor Laura Mulvey in 1975 created one of the most influential feminist pieces in film studies history, an essay titled Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. In studying pre-existing patterns of films and, quote, dominant ideological concepts of cinema, Mulvey stated women's lack of a physical phallus and envy of male genitalia produces a, quote, symbolic presence, a desire to make good the lack that the phallus signifies, and to give order and meaning to its world. In Wonder Woman, Diana needs a phallic object to defeat Ares / a god, to symbolically become more like a man. She even blatantly states it in a conversation with Trevor.
There's not a whole lot you and I can do about that. I mean, we can get back to London and try to get to the men who can.
I'm the man who can.
But because Diana is Christ, she doesn't need a phallic object. She already is the savior and defeater of the evil one, and Ares destroys her weapon with ease. She is the god killer. She is the son of Zeus and the queen of the Amazons. She is a god. Mulvey's other important topic is woman as image and man as the bearer of look. She states that films are structured with a male main protagonist that a male spectator can identify with. As the spectator does so, he projects his look onto that of his like, his screen surrogate, so that the power of the male protagonist as he controls events coinciding with the active power of the erotic look both give a satisfying sense of omnipotence. Mulvey coined this concept the male gaze, which is active, and, quote, projects its fantasy onto the female figure, which is styled accordingly. Women are simultaneously looked at and displayed, with their appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact, so that they can be said to connote to be looked at-ness. It signifies male desire, and she cites close-ups of legs or faces into a narrative as, quote, a different mode of eroticism. Cinematic images of women are, quote, tied to her place as a bearer of meaning, not maker of meaning. Film watching is a private affair, according to Stanley Cavell, offering the viewer both invisibility and an absence of responsibility. Critic Parker Tyler thinks this private affair is not just voyeuristic but explicitly sexual. He states that Hollywood can't meet the high standard of art that, say, Europe can, and California mirrors mythical cultural values and evokes primitive responses in mass audiences. Modern movie stars are, quote, the god and goddesses of Hollywood, remnants of the old Greek deities that gratify our deepest fantasies. Considering the admiration Miss Israel 2004 Gal Gadot gets for her beauty, and the fact that she has kissed a person of her own sex for entertainment not once but twice, Tyler's theory rings true. In Wonder Woman, Gal indeed wears a form-fitting costume and struts in slow motion in a short skirt during the film. Mulvey discussed fetishistic scopophilia, saying it, quote, builds up the physical beauty of the object, transforming it into something satisfying in itself, and how scopophilia, quote, arises from pleasure in using another person as an object of sexual stimulation through sight. Gal's hair and skin in the film is always perfect. She is not showing any midriff. However, her costume is generously busty. So Jim Cameron was correct. Gal is objectified. Of course, a man with a filmography showcasing strong female characters would know a thing or two about tough women. He's been producing them since the 80s, and a discourse analysis of these roles can back this up. One cannot know what a discourse analysis is without knowing what discourse means first. In every narrative, there's a structure, according to Seymour Chapman. There's a content plane called story, and an expression plane called discourse. Components of story are plot, events of a story, character, and settings. Chapman continues, quote, saying, Aristotle defined plot as the arrangement of incidents. Structuralist narrative theory argues the arrangement is precisely the operation performed by the discourse. According to William Cadbury, narrative discourse is, quote, precisely the text itself, the actual arrangement of signers that communicate the story, words in literature, moving images and written titles and silent films. It is only through this means of expression that we come in contact with either the story or the act of narrating. The story is an imaginary construction that the spectator or reader creates while reading the narrative discourse of an actual text. And since he is discussing literature and not film, movies are, quote, directly iconic as a series of photographic representation signs is. Literary critic Gerard Genette pointed out in Language, quote, showing can only be a way of telling. Film, in contrast, can show more immediately than it can tell. Cadbury adds, a single image can pack a punch of information. Narrative discourse means statements. Narrativization, defined by Professor Stephen Heath, is, quote, precisely what holds Genette's three aspects of narrative. Mise en scène, everything placed in front of the camera to be filmed / what's being filmed. Mise en cadre, which is placement within the frame or camera movement. And mise en scène, editing, together. The process of narrativization binds narrative discourse to the story and rules the narrator's address to the spectator. Cadbury finalized, arranged synchronically, quote, different degrees of assertiveness in the narrative discourse of films could distinguish among narrative styles of different filmmakers. So, a spectator or, quote, reader must unearth the virtual narrative by penetrating its medial surface to, quote, get to an auteur's true message and significance. And a discourse analysis does just that, interpreting on a pragmatic and social level. A multimodal discourse analysis is an analysis of, quote, different and various semiotic modes. It aims to analyze how elements of a representational, interactive, and textual meanings work together to form a complete discourse. D.L. Zhang formed the, quote, theoretical framework of multimodal discourse analysis, which includes 5 levels: culture, context, meaning, form, and media. Jim Cameron's first big hit was his sci-fi horror piece in 1984. Sarah Connor, an atypical young American, is chosen to go on an incredible journey of metamorphosis from everyday girl to mother of the future human resistance, fighting for her life every inch of the way. At first, Sarah is weak and not able to achieve her destiny.
Just let me go.
Listen!
In her current state, she does not want to be chosen for this campaign.
Come on, do I look like the mother of the future? I mean, am I tough? Organized? I can't even balance my checkbook. I didn't ask for this honor, and I don't want it.
Sean French stated that it is easier for the audience to gravitate, quote, towards the character who has an aura of a hero, even if it's the villain like the Terminator, because it's, quote, a flawlessly productive machine of action. James Saunders said in his book Celluloid Skyline that there is something universally attractive in, quote, the beauty of pure functionality.
Perfect organism.
He argues that the T-800 in the original Terminator evokes, quote, the devil in all of us who find ourselves against any logical judgment, sympathizing with Schwarzenegger, the bringer of end and a missionary of the beast over his targets. For Sarah to change into the hero, she must, quote, in part become that which she must destroy. It is the purpose of evil to, quote, bring about this revelation. However, that doesn't mean she has to become a man, per se. Judith Butler noted, quote, to be a woman is to have become a woman, to compel the body to conform to an historical idea of woman, to induce the body to become a cultural sign, to materialize oneself in obedience to a historically delimited possibility, and to do this as a sustained and repeated corporeal project. Thomas Edwards noted Fanny in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park as the most vulnerable of all the Austen heroes, making her the most human. By making a character more human with flaws or changes to be made, you make them more relatable to audiences. Sarah goes through her transformation, starting at the midpoint of the film. She saves Kyle's life by not attempting to shoot the police. After they escape the police station, she wants to help him heal in the tunnel. Going from someone that doesn't want to be a part of this to actually trying. In the beginning of the third act, Kyle gets injured from a grenade blast and forces Sarah into action. She has to drive their vehicle. Sarah successfully takes out the T-800 but wrecks the car in the process, and the Terminator soon recovers. Sarah then rescues Kyle by dragging him out of the truck by herself and saves him from being run over. The two work as a team, Sarah the distraction and Kyle the pyrotechnic, and they blow up the semi with the T-800 inside. However, this story is about Sarah, not Kyle and Sarah.
Kyle! We did it, Kyle!
If it was, the film would have ended right there. Instead, it continues. Sarah needs to advance as a character. She helps Kyle into a machine factory with the Terminator hot on their trail. Her revolution continues in the final fight. In the factory, Kyle falls down exhausted. The T-800 is on the other side of the door, breaking it down, getting closer. Sarah is a damsel in distress, waiting for Kyle to lead. Her voice is feminine and higher pitched, and is begging Kyle to get up as she shakes him in desperation. She uses his first name.
Kyle!
Then something occurs to trigger an internal change. She sees the T-800 is about to burst through the door, lowers her voice, and is no longer asking. She is demanding Kyle to continue the fight and uses his last name instead.
Reese! On your feet, soldier!
Sarah picks him up and drags him. Kyle stands mano-a-mano with the cyborg and tells Sarah to sprint away, but she wants to stay and fight alongside him. Her metamorphosis is now nearly complete, but she still has to defeat the Terminator once and for all. A Terminator blown in half by Reese, who gave his life in an attempt to completely blow up the machine. Both of them had a hand in the machine's demise, with Sarah putting the final nail on the coffin, destroying the Terminator. Cameron says to women to stop wasting your time and realize your true potential as strong badasses.
I said no, and I mean it.
2 years later, in 1986, James Cameron followed up Ridley Scott's classic sci-fi thriller with a classic of his own. Cameron showed the world how dense America was for going to war in Vietnam with an invisible enemy.
Hey Ripley, don't worry. Me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you.
And displayed how cocky they were for not listening to a woman.
Look, man, I only need to know one thing. Where they are.
In fact, Ripley had to deal with a lot of persecution. The company didn't believe her story at all from the first film and revoked her flight license.
Are there any species like this hostile organism on LV-426?
No, it's a rock. No indigenous life.
But one man believed her. He sent a team to investigate Ripley's story, and she, unfortunately, was right. So maybe he's not such a bad guy after all.
What if that ship didn't even exist? Did you ever think about that? I didn't know.
Just kidding.
Okay, good. Stay on it.
Ripley's maltreatment continued with the Marines, as she had to prove herself to them on multiple occasions.
I feel like kind of a fifth wheel around here. Is there anything I can do?
I don't know. Is there anything you can do?
They viewed her as above them at first.
Looks like the new lieutenant's too good to eat with the rest of us grunts.
But she later gained their trust by showing off her wit.
Well, look where your team is. They're right under the primary heat exchangers.
So?
So, if they fire their weapons in there, won't they rupture the cooling system?
And how much of a leader she is, saving them from the onslaught of death.
Ripley, what the hell are you doing?
If the incompetent Gordon was in charge, and if Ripley doesn't step up there, all the Marines perish.
Get them out of there! Do it now!
Shut up!
In the end, the soldiers listened to Ripley.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
I'm not blind to what's going on, but I cannot authorize that kind of action. I'm sorry.
Well, I believe Corporal Hicks has authority here.
Say we take off, nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Cameron turned Ripley into a former combat veteran who went back into a war zone to defeat her PTSD and night terrors from her old experiences.
Are you all right?
Ripley chose to slay her demons, and Cameron empowered her as a female to make that decision. Dr. Susan Hopkins, writer of Girl Heroes, says girl power is, quote, when she knows what she wants and will fight for it. And instead of with the help of Hicks, Ripley defeats the alien queen with the help of machinery, just like Sarah 2 years prior. Cameron actually plays around with stereotypes when it comes to psychoanalysis, making him even more of a feminist than he was previously. Professor Yvonne Tasker theorized on how male action characters are unstoppable because their bodies are so well sculpted out of muscle. Nothing can penetrate them. She said the heroine of Hollywood action pictures is more commonly been figured as a romantic interest for the hero. Ripley in Ridley Scott's original film represented a significant development of a portrayal of action heroines. Weakness vulnerability is expressed through the mobilization of traits associated with femininity, mostly particularly a softness or lack of definition, which might allow the body to be fatally penetrated. It is these terms that the scars and wounds which mark the body of a suffering male hero are significant. It's the muscular male body function as a sort of armor. Yes, Sarah is jacked in T2, but she is not in the original film and still defeats a Terminator. She doesn't have a robot able body. Her body as a regular woman is capable enough. In Aliens, Cameron has the hulked up Vasquez killed. It makes regular looking, quote, lack of definition, which might allow the body to be penetrated, unquote, Ripley, the hero, not getting sucked into space whilst climbing a ladder, avoiding debris, and an alien queen, shutting the airlock and defeating the queen once and for all. Ripley is the only adult left standing, and she did it without the help of men.
Not bad for a human.
That's girl power. 3 years later, Cameron continued his strong female motif when he created The Abyss. Dr. Lindsay Brigman is a workaholic, and she put her marriage to the side for her career.
I've got over 4 years invested in this project.
Yeah, you only had 3 years invested in me.
Well, you have to have priorities.
She designed the rig the crew works on and saves a man, yet she's still oppressed.
Just don't call me that, okay? I hate that.
All right. Well, what would you like us to call you? Sir?
When she claims that there's something alien outside, she's made fun of.
Something non-human, but intelligent.
And labeled hysterical.
I'm trying to keep the situation under control. I can't allow you to create this kind of hysteria.
Who's hysterical? Nobody's hysterical.
Even though she's right. She's put through trials from the crew on her views and stands up for herself against coffee.
To know what I need to know is that thing is off this rig. Do you hear me, Roger Ramjet?
She then finally has the opportunity to prove herself against her doubters and shoves it in their faces.
So raise your hand if you think that was a Russian water tentacle. Lieutenant? No?
Even then, she still attempts to sacrifice herself to save Bud, giving him a scuba mask. And to show how strong she really is, Cameron has her come back from the dead. Dr. Lindsay is a fighter. And to make her arc complete, Cameron has her admit her faults in her marriage, stating that she made mistakes in her past and feels regret for them.
Bud, there's some things I need to say.
In the end, her husband is alive, and they share a kiss to end the story, showing love wins out if you at least try. Then came one mini antithesis in 1994.
Sharmuta! Stupid, undisciplined bitch.
It's a good thing you're paying me a lot of money.
True Lies. The film, again, is about marriage, but in a different tone.
Helen is having an affair.
Welcome to the club, man. Women. Can't live with them, can't kill them.
Harry's wife, Helen, is attempting to cheat on him with a guy named Simon. She's bored with Harry, who seemingly is never home and never really paid attention to her anyway.
So what do you tell him?
I slept with him and he said he'd knock off $100.
That's good thinking. Bye, honey.
And Helen just wants a spark in her life.
Just that there's so much I wanted to do with this life, and it's like I haven't done any of it.
She couldn't express herself and just wanted to feel something. However, she takes the moral path and chooses not to have the affair.
No, I cannot do this. I cannot do this!
After the contextual theme is blatantly stated by Tom Arnold's character, Gib.
You know what? I think you're going about this whole thing all wrong. You see, women, they like you to talk to them, you know? And maybe it's just that you're not in touch with your feminine side. I was watching Sally Jesse Rockfield.
And Harry hears Helen talk about her sufferings. He gives her the assignment of being a spy, finally connecting his life with hers.
You gotta be shitting me.
She wants a little adventure, so I'm gonna give her one.
In what is probably the most famous scene in the film, Helen has to dance and seduce a man in a hotel. Her look has been transformed from a regular semi-darky early 90s mom, not very attractive, to a woman with a more revealing dress and sexier makeup and hair. She does an erotic dance in a hotel room with a supposed criminal watching, but it is with clothes on. She is not nude, even though this is a rated R film. She also defends herself, hitting her assailant in the head with a telephone after he tries making a pass at her. Even if she is considered sexy or in modern, appealing clothing, she is still a badass and could do badass things. Later on in the film, she is saved by her husband because he knows how to pick handcuffs and shoot bad guys. Helen is only an everyday secretary who doesn't have any combat or weapons training. Cameron plays on this for comedy as she blindly shoots an Uzi, drops it, and the gun automatically fires and kills the incoming terrorists, inadvertently saving her husband. The bit works also because the genre is action comedy.
As a demonstration of our power and Crimson Jihad's willingness to be humanitarian. However,
one of Cameron's villains in the film is a woman, showing females can be in high positions of power. And this particular female, Tia Carrere, is drop-dead gorgeous. Both Tia's character, Juno, and Helen duke it out in the climax, where Helen's character transformation of working in an office to battling terrorists becomes complete at the end of the film. The arc begins with Helen slapping Juno, making her bloody. Helen then wrestles a gun away from Juno and beats her with a wine bottle. She didn't need a man to defeat Juno. However, Harry did have to bail her out to save her life via a helicopter. Helen is then part of Harry's spy work in the end. She uses a feminist object of lipstick to represent a phallic object of a gun to Simon, scaring him away. She's not a female character from the Mission Impossible franchise, but if Ellen doesn't defeat Juno by herself in a limo, she's toast. As the credits roll, the renewed couple tango on the dance floor, spending the final moments of the story with one another instead of working. Cameron silenced any critic of his with his mega hit in 1997. He created an anti-establishment.
You know I don't like that rose.
She knows.
Self-thinker.
It doesn't look any bigger than the Mauritania.
Who doesn't want to be controlled by anyone in Rose.
I'm not a foreman in one of your mills that you can command. I'm your fiancé.
Her mother made an arranged marriage between her and a bountiful man because she didn't want to work a modest job.
It is a fine match with Hockley. It will ensure our survival.
She guilt trips Rose about their circumstances even though she didn't have anything to do with her father's absence, and throughout the story has a back and forth with herself and her existentialism.
I am leaving now. Jack, Mr. Dawson, it's been a pleasure. I sought you out to thank you, and now I have thanked you.
And you've insulted me.
We'll both have the lamb. Rare with very little mint sauce, eh? You like lamb, right, sweet pea?
Sausage.
She watches a little girl who's told what to do and how to act, and finalizes her decision. Cameron has her liberated by her own free will.
It's not up to you to save me, Jack.
You're right. Only you can do that.
Rose's spirit is strong. She breaks free of the image shown for her and her aristocratic bubble. She rebels. She goes to a peon party and has the time of her life. She falls in love with someone she shouldn't, according to society's standards. The most famous spectacle in the film is the painting scene, but it's in the story for Rose's liberation, expressing herself as a woman, showing off her body, and breaking her mother and fiancé's domination.
Wearing this.
All right.
Wearing only this.
Rose and Jack fall in love because they understand one another spiritually. They see people and moments as a priority, not material possessions, like the heart of the ocean. Jack cared for her, unlike her family and friends, which were nowhere to be seen during her attempted suicide. They ignored her warning calls of help. It's parallel to Ripley and Newt in Aliens. Ripley gives Newt love, showing respect and appreciation just like Jack does with Rose. Newt opens up to Ripley in return. This changes Rose's outlook of the world. She shows off renewed strength and physical ability, punching a guy who won't listen to her, welding an axe to break Jack's handcuffs to save him, and is morally apt enough to save a child's life.
We can't leave him.
She's so convinced in her own convictions and love for Jack, she'd rather die to have a few more select moments with him, rather than live out the rest of her days without him. That is a woman that knows what she wants and embodies girl power. And Rose was right in her judgments of the men in her life.
I wanted to convey sheer size, and above all, strength.
Do you know of Dr. Freud, Mr. Ismay? His ideas about the male preoccupation with size might be of particular interest to you.
The men who her mother sides with, Cal and Ismay, were terrible human beings, and their aggressive masculinity.
So you've not yet lit the last 4 boilers.
We are making excellent time.
This maiden voyage of Titanic must make headlines.
Caused the ship's demise.
How much time?
An hour.
And how many aboard, Mr. Murdoch?
2,200 souls on board, sir.
Well, I believe you may get your headlines, Mr. Ismay.
And the shipbuilder Andrews, Captain Smith, and Jack are examples of real men who take responsibility for their wrongdoings.
I'm sorry that didn't build you a stronger ship, young Rose.
Titanic is a beautiful portrait of democracy and liberty, about how women have a choice in life to do what they want with whom they want, further strengthening Cameron's female character catalog. Jim's latest endeavor, Avatar, has thematic elements of a government that doesn't care about veterans and wants to destroy the environment for capital gain, which is possibly analogous to the United States and the Middle East from the early to mid-2000s. Quaritch, played by Stephen Lang, and his Marines are symbolic for whites coming from the Old World and the Na'vi being the Native Americans. Instead of a female being a fish out of water and learning like in Aliens, Cameron flips it and makes the man the fish out of the water instead of men being the cognizant, and has Jake learn steps from the 2 lead females, Grace and Nateri, which are both very self-sufficient. Grace is similar to Lindsay in The Abyss. She is a doctor, a high person of status. It's layered into the film that Grace dislikes people but respects nature.
Grace Augustine is a legend. She's the head of the Avatar program. She wrote the book. I mean, literally wrote the book on Pandoran botany.
Well, that's because she likes plants better than people.
From the start, she doesn't even give Jake sympathy after Sully said his brother was dead. She immediately drills him afterwards instead.
I know it's a big inconvenience for everyone.
How much lab training have you had?
When Jake returns out of a long, dangerous run in his Avatar, Grace doesn't ask Jake if he's okay. She asks the status of the Na'vi body.
Is the Avatar safe?
Yeah, Doc.
But later in the film, she undergoes a transformation. She ends up becoming a caring individual for her crew, making sure Jake is showered and fed.
Don't make me force feed a cripple.
Grace, hey!
Then fights for the Na'vi species as a whole.
Back off, Parker. Wait, stop. These are people you're about to...
No. They're fly-bitten savages that live in a tree.
And stands up to male authority figures.
Shut your pie hole. Or what? Ranger Rick, you gonna shoot me?
I can do that.
You need to muzzle your dog.
Yeah, can we just take this down a couple of notches, please?
Grace ends up losing her life fighting to save them. The people she loved, after all, the right people, and not the wrong ones.
We build them a school, we teach them English, but after what? How many years? Relations with the indigenous are only getting worse.
Yeah, that tends to happen when you use machine guns on them.
Other females in the film are just as forceful. Nateri is a Na'vi princess, beyond capable in combat. She is reluctant to take Jake in, but the pure spirits of the secret tree show her that Jake isn't all that bad and she should try to trust him. She ends up falling in love, teaching him the ways of her people, including weapons training, having her trust broken and then regained again. Michelle Rodriguez's character, Trudy, is a tough female side character. She bosses around coworkers to get work done on a chopper in her first scene, splits off from the military committing genocide, and helps her friends escape, stealing a chopper to get them to the Avatar hub deep in the forest of Pandora. She dies fighting for the cause as Grace did. One thing Sarah Connor almost shared a parallel with in Terminator 2, if it wasn't for her partner. There's a huge scene that ended up on the cutting room floor in the midpoint of the film for the theatrical cut, where John wants to reprogram the Terminator and make him more of an emotional individual.
Can you learn stuff that you haven't been programmed with so you can be, you know, more human?
This scene is a representation of 3 aspects of narrativization for Terminator 2. The ability to be cool, trust issues, and how relationships need to be 50-50 to survive. Literary theorist Roman Jacobson noted, quote, "The basic characteristic of the cinema is that it transforms the object into a sign. The film mobilizes fragments of the world, but turns them into elements of a discourse in the very act of ordering them, editing. And this ordering can operate in accordance with two main associative principles, metaphor and metonymy. The musical choices of Terminator 2 have a calculated subtext to them. The songs in the first act of the film, one by hard rock band Guns N' Roses, one by country pioneer Dwight Yoakam, and the last by boogie blues musician George Thorogood. All three songs deal with breakups, moving on, materialism, and or being cool. Guns N' Roses' You Could Be Mine is about a band member writing about a personal relationship gone awry. Dwight Yoakam's country tune is about dealing with sadness by acquiring material possessions and vices. Bad to the Bone is on the nose for this argument, as the T-800 takes a man's bike and someone else's sunglasses to boot, embodying the persona of being cool. Mise en scene is everything placed in front of the camera to be filmed. It's what Cadbury calls, quote, pro-filmic. It includes such things as the actors, and therefore casting decisions and performance style, lighting, set design, selection of locations, and selection of props. Quote, however, film viewers see the images on screen as images of things, and the selection of the things that make up the image plays an extremely important role in conveying narrative information. As narrative discourse, the pro-filmic embodies a series of choices and reveals a narrative intention behind the choices. The viewer receives results of these choices and makes inferences based on them. In Terminator 2, Cameron uses clothing as a symbol, much like Leo Tolstoy did for his short story After the Ball. In Ball, Tolstoy compared Ivan's view of his love, Varenka, and how beautiful she is in her bronze clothing, as a representation of royalty, and how it is in contrast with the tortured soldier outside Tatar's lack thereof. In the beginning of the film, the T-800 acquires his coolness in the bar, being a self-reliable individual, but at the end breaks his conceptions of what women are in his life and is in need of help from them. The T-800 is slick and serene, dressed in all black leather in his opening segment. In the original Terminator, the T-800 attacks a group of deplorables, and by the process of elimination uses the last man standing's clothes as his own. He doesn't scan for a match for best looking attire like in the sequel, he just simply takes them. He then rescues John, son of a feminist, that has him change his ideals slowly over the course of the story. John changes the T-800's perception of cool, from trigger happiness.
Listen to me very carefully, okay? You're not a Terminator anymore, all right? You got that? You just can't go around killing people.
And learning how to have credence in mankind.
I swear I will not kill anyone.
Visiting hours is 10 to 4, Monday through Friday.
He'll live.
He listens to them. He helps them. He is a good supporting partner, not symbolic of the songs from the first act anymore.
I'll take you off the police.
Hey, wait, you swore!
Trust me.
He is a new, changed man, not taking out innocent bystanders and learning to care about people.
We have feelings. We hurt. We're afraid. You gotta learn this stuff. I'm not kidding. It's important.
He even matures to become more tender.
Why do you cry?
You mean people?
Yeah.
I don't know. We just cry. You know, when it hurts.
Because men sometimes don't show that side of themselves.
Does it hurt when you get shot?
I sense injuries. The data could be called pain.
And Cameron says maybe males should.
I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
The Terminator learns these new things not just by John but by women as well. During the middle of his metamorphosis, a female guard breaks his sunglasses. This is not by chance. This is by design. By the end of the film, Uncle Bob is no longer in his former matching all-black attire, as he is battered in reds and silvers in his clothes and his face, damaged from the battle alongside his partner Sarah in the steelworks. The last symbol of cool is the Skynet chip in the Terminator's head, as well as the one in Dyson's possession. John asked to reset the chip to reprogram the T-800's ability to not just read but write as well. The Terminator not only learned real feminism, but quirky interpersonal communication, much to the audience's delight.
No. You gotta listen to the way people talk.
Dyson is another man in the story that learns the same lesson as the Terminator. He's obsessed with this glorious object, thinking it's the most divine property, and doesn't spend time with his family.
Why did we get married, Miles? Why did we have these children? You don't need us. Your heart and your mind are in here. But it doesn't love you like we do.
He serves his penance by taking the gang to Cyberdyne and agrees to destroy the main concentration of his life, the original Terminator CPU. The Skynet properties have to be destroyed or reprogrammed because they are an old way of thinking. On to Sarah. In the original Terminator, the original T-800 was an emotionless killing machine.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with.
It manipulated people to reach its goals and would not be slowed down to kill Sarah and prevent the leader of the resistance from being born. That's all she knows in Terminator 2. Destruction, pain, suffering.
Men like you built the hydrogen bomb. Men like you thought it up.
The Terminator could have also been an allegory for a creeper who doesn't stop stalking their ex, or an allegory for an abusive relationship. In the finale, after Sarah escapes with her life from the endoskeleton, a child says to her if she doesn't pay him for the picture he took of her, his father will beat him. The abuse isn't just physical, but mental as well in the film. Traxler tells his boss about an interrogation that turned into sacrilege distress for one individual.
That guy Silverman cracks me up. Last week he had this guy in there that burned his Afghan. He screwed it first, then he said, "Hey, shut up."
What does Cameron say about men in the original Terminator? That there are two types, the kind that are vile.
First, I'm gonna rip the buttons off your blouse one by one.
And or violent.
You can't do that.
And the kind that are true men, protectors and providers.
It's just him and me.
Kyle Reese loved Sarah Connor. She was a legend, but he never met her until he was chosen to protect her one day. He gave up his life preserving her. There's a reason why the Terminator repeats the line from Kyle in the original film in the sequel.
Come with me if you want to live.
Come with me if you want to live.
To instill trust. This new man will be just like Kyle, but she's not so sure yet. After all, she hasn't had an adult man in her life that she can have faith in, as she couldn't keep a boyfriend.
For a while there, she was with this crazy ex-Green Beret guy. Running guns. Then there were some other guys. Then she gets busted. It's like, sorry kid, your mom's a psycho, didn't you know?
And the rest of the men don't believe her story, or are trying to sexually assault her, like the guard who licks her face at night. So, the woman has trust issues, even with her own son.
Are you all right? Yeah. Come here. I said it was okay.
Which is why she nearly destroyed the Terminator's chip in the midpoint.
Listen, we are better off on our own.
But he's the only proof we have of the future and the war and all that.
But didn't. Which brings the last revelation of the narrativization, It Takes Two. If Sarah destroys that chip in the deleted midpoint scene, she doesn't get the help she needs against the T-1000 in the factory, and is killed without the help of the T-800. If the film was only about changing your perception of cool, the story would have ended after the liquid metal villain wearing a boys in blue uniform was killed by frozen shattering from a spill of a truck full of liquid nitrogen, which boiling point is nearly minus 200 Celsius. But the film didn't end there because the story is about relationships. Aristotle argued that characters are products of plots, that their status is functional. Jonathan Blake's thematic analysis of Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tale, The Wife of Bath, points out an equal balance, quote, is necessary in a functional society in an effort to assert women's equality with men. Sarah is stalwart in Terminator 2, but she still needs a partner to help her defeat the T-1000 and stop Judgment Day from happening. She might have been able to escape from the facility without the help of the T-800, but she would not have defeated the mimetic polyalloy prototype. She might have been able to escape Cyberdyne, but if it wasn't for the Terminator breaking down a wall, she most likely would have been caught by the police again, as alluded to why she was locked up in the first place.
She tried to blow up the computer factory, but she got shot and arrested. Oh, shit.
A multimodal discourse analysis calls for levels of context and meaning to make up its framework. James Cameron is a man that has been married 5 times. That means he's gone through 4 divorces. He was married and divorced twice before getting hitched to Catherine Bigelow from 1989 until Terminator 2's release in 1991. Historical or social context is equality for both partners makes relationships work. Sarah thinks she can do everything on her own until a crucial moment changed her thinking. She goes to Dyson to murder him and prevent Judgment Day, but fails. She realizes Miles has a son just like she does, that Dyson is a parent too. She breaks down and the men in her life come to support her. Instead of going off on her own path, she decides to let men in on her life. In the final sequence, Cameron has Sarah injured in her right shoulder, and the T-800 has his left arm ripped off, both by the hands of the T-1000. Combine these 2 people together, and you'll be able to get one fully armed person symbolically representing the narrativization. Sarah uses a shotgun with one arm to take down the villainous T-1000. She gets him to nearly the edge of death, next to the barrel of molten lava. But what happens? She runs out of shells and is in deep trouble. And just before the T-1000 can attack and kill her, the T-800 comes in and fires off his M79 grenade launcher, which pushes the T-1000 over the edge and to a molten death, completing the syntactic narrative element of dual effort for a relationship to work. The T-800 even needs Sarah's help to dismantle him as the final chip. The old ideologies need to go.
Here, I cannot self-terminate. You must lower me into the steel.
Tim Miller's 2019 sequel, Terminator Dark Fate, not only ripped off many aspects of T2, but also pilfered this subtext.
Hey! Get up! Help her! Damn it! Paul! Wake up!
The main character, Danny, a girl, needed a male figure in her life to defeat her unstoppable adversary. 2 pieces of Terminator 2's narrativization plays into the fantastic bad times at the El Royale. When it comes to the being cool aspect, the vacuum salesman fails because he talks too much.
You got a phone number for any of those people? Because I sure would like to sell them one of these vacuum cleaners.
He is the antithesis of Del Toro in the Sicario films, who is stoic, silent, only speaks when needed, strong, and cool. Feminism is striving for equality of the sexes, where it takes 2 to make a thing go right and also to get out of a wrong. There's a duality to the entire film represented in Bad Times. Symbolically, Nevada, California, 2 beings, one female, one male, to make it work, as they try to retrieve lost property together. In the climax, the 2 have a hand in saving their own lives. Flynn goes for Billy Lee, and Darlene tells the bellboy Miles the right words, igniting the right match for his inner fire.
Sorry. You don't have to kill any more people.
Miles undergoes a transformation like the T-800 and Sarah, differentiating between what's right and wrong when it comes to Homo sapiens. T2's ending was pragmatic and perfect, because men and women are both equivalents, and in order to save us all, we cannot without one another. If we work together as 2 sexes, we can put off our inevitable doom. We can stop our Judgment Day. Thank you for watching another episode of Cinema Series. I'm your host, Matthew. No BS outro. Let's do this. Support me during this terrible crisis. You can buy a t-shirt from the t-shirt shop. I have 2 Terminator style shirt designs, or you can buy a hoodie or leggings. It's up to you, doesn't matter. You can donate in the tip jar. Thanks to Andrew for donating a lot of money. You're probably not asking for a shout out, but I just wanted to say thank you on camera to express my gratitude and love and appreciation. There's literally no words that I can express myself externally. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. You can support this channel for free. There's no pressure to buy anything. However, you could go to the Amazon store and buy the Terminator 2 Blu-ray I have set up in the link in the description down below. It is the version I prefer. It has actual film noise. It does not have digital noise reduction, and it does not look teal. Buy the Blu-ray that's in the description below. That's the superior version of the film. Of course, you can subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, you click the like button, leave a comment. Most importantly, share this video with a friend if they like Jim Cameron or Terminator 2 like I do. It's pretty much my favorite action film of all time. Follow me on social media at MichaelManman, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks, have a great day. God bless.
End of line. Good luck and congratulations on choosing C. Press.
regretted to have the American ambassador expelled after the incident. The U.S. State Department responded quickly with a formal apology and announcement of the ambassador's immediate voluntary